All right guys, welcome back to the shack, and today I'm going to be going to step 2 of the stove cover build. If you'll recall, in part 1 we made it to this point where I've got it glued up, clamped up, and I let it dry. I apologize, I had planned on doing part 2 the next day, but life got in the way, some things came up, and I didn't get to make it back out here. But today I'm going to try to get this started off camera. I do have company, so if you hear me talking to somebody, guys, I haven't lost it just yet. My brother is here, and he's decided to be kind of behind the scenes today. So for now, he shall remain a secret, but soon enough, guys. But anyway, stick around for a minute. We're going to get this thing out of the clamps, going to get it over to the laser, get it burned, and show you the process of this becoming a functioning stove cover. So stick around, guys. All right, guys, the first step is we got to get the clamps off of it, of course. And hopefully our wood glue has done what it's supposed to, and everything's going to stay together once we take these off. Now, I guess there's always a possibility that it could fall apart, but I've done probably 30 or 40 of these, and so far my glue ups have held. We'll be needing these 2 clamps for the laser here shortly, so I'm going to keep them nearby. And I'm going to hang on to my boards here because I'm going to be doing another glue up off camera here shortly. All right, guys, so the next part of this is I've got the panel. Basically now this thing is one continual board. The boards are glued together, shouldn't go anywhere. Now we're not going to go get crazy with it because it is going to have some more supports screwed to it. But the next step of the process is to make sure that this guy is squared and ready to move forward. So for that, I'm going to break out my old trusty square here. And guys, I have been tearing up my mechanical pencils lately. So I've got my ruler, square, all this good stuff. So the one thing that I want to do to start with is I got to make sure I got a square edge on this end, because if you remember, we cut these in the table saw, so I know that this line is straight and true. So now the chop saw does a good job, so it should also be straight and true here. But what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting one continual line on this material so that when I put this together, it just looks like one board. So I'm just going to come back and just do a straight edge all the way across the entirety of the stove cover. Once I get that done, we're just going to rip that off with a skill saw. And I know if I had a bigger table saw, I could probably do that, guys, and it'd make a cleaner cut, but first of all, I don't have a bigger table saw. And secondly, some of y'all may not have one if you want to try this build. And I'm going to put my glasses on, guys. So, all you OSHA guys out there. All right, here we go. All right, so now I have a straight edge on this end, and you can see that it is one continual cut. I don't got nothing pushing out or jutting out anywhere. So I'm going to go to the other side now. The width on these, it needs to be 30.5 inches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull my measuring tape there, and I'm going to mark 30.5 on this end of the panel. And we're going to make us a line there also. And I'm going to knock this end off. I've got a little spoiled with my dust collection system, guys. Can you hit that switch on that dust collector over there for me? I might have to get some adapters for my skill saws and whatnot. I think I used to not having all this mess. I got most of it cleaned up. All right, so now guys, we have a panel. Our panel is square, or at least it should be if we did everything right. We got 4 square corners. Before I move on to the laser, the one thing that I always like to do is I like to make sure I dedicate which side is the rear. And normally, you will know that by my biscuit marks that I put on there. I biscuit the top surface just to make sure this is consistent. And so I go around to the back here, and that is where the Clack Shack stamp comes into play. And if you're interested in a stamp of your own, there is a video on my playlist of how I made this stamp. So just search stamp. And there we go. So that's how I mark the back. So now I know throughout this whole process that that is the back of my stove cover, because it has my stamp on the middle of it. Now we've got to sand this guy. And I'm going to start out, this wood's kind of soft, so I'm going to stick with 120 grit sandpaper. If you go too coarse with your sandpaper, guys, you will end up wrecking it and putting valleys and troughs in it. So I go with the 120 on this material. On some of the wood that I mill, I have to step it up because it's a little harder and go with a 80. But I found with this stuff, 120 works just fine. All right, guys, the next step is before we go to the laser, we got to make sure, because the way that I do them is I use the center of this board at 30.5, which I knew that. I'm just measuring for you guys, so don't be throwing rocks at me on that. 30.5 inches, 15.25 is my center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to mark just a really, really faint mark right here on 15.25. All right, and then I got to come in. The length of this thing's 22.5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down and I'm going to make me another mark, a really faint mark, because you don't want to try to get this thing off in case the laser misses it. Now most of the time the laser takes care of this mark for me. So I'm going to put me a little faint crosshair right there, dead center. 11.25 down, 15.25 in. That'll be the same all four directions. That is the physical center of that stove cover. So now we're ready to move over to engraving, and for this engraved, guys, I'm gonna be using my trusty 10 watt as usual. All right, guys, over here at the my excess table, and of course we're gonna be using my little jig here. If you don't have one of these, guys, this is a very handy piece of equipment when it comes to doing these stove covers. All it is, if you have my kit for a jig, for the locking panel for my jig kit, it's basically an extra one that I cut. I cut a little piece out right here for the Wi-Fi antenna, which you don't have to do. You can flip the machine around and leave that piece in there, but I like it this way, and so that's the way I've been doing it. So I'm going to show you how I go about this. I forget about that now that I've started using this machine's air assist. And then these two clamps basically just hold this jig onto the panel. You got to make sure that this end down here stays even with the edge, and then tighten it up. The only purpose of these clamps, guys, is to hold my jig where it's supposed to be on the stove cover. And I am running out of room, guys. Same thing with the back. Once I get these on here secured, you want to make sure that you don't have any like major differences in the elevation of the jig and the board. So that's pretty much the way it's going to look for now, guys. I've got the jig panel on the board. The board's basically, this thing is serving as a waste board at this point. And then I will be using my 10 watt. So I'm gonna go on here and unhook everything. 10 watt goes on here. Once you get it on there, guys, it locks in the same as my other panels. This will not allow the machine to move. I have to run a little different setup on my air assist here. I've got some more parts ordered, but they haven't gotten here yet, so I had to engineer myself a connector using a T instead of a splice. Now I've got all of my enclosures, the portable enclosures. I've gotten all of them occupied, unfortunately, for the moment until I get another one. So we're just going to let this one run open air today because I don't want to have to take the other machine out. Since I put the lights and everything in the other enclosure, it's just a hassle. So we're going to be running this one with no enclosure. I'm just verifying that my air hose is going to reach but not get in the work area. Pulling the machine down and to the left, making sure it's all the way at the home position. And I'm going to move over to Lightburn. Now, I've got some Christmas ornaments running on the 20 watt. So I'll be running a separate instance of Lightburn and partnering it up with the 10. So I've got to make sure I change my port number as well as my machine assignment. All right. The machine is going to automatically believe that it's at the home location, which it is because I manually moved it. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to my stove cover setting, and it should go to where my mark is, or really, really close. That is very close. I'm going to make it move 1 millimeter to the right and 1 millimeter up, and it to go down and to the right. Okay, aces. All right, so I now have the machine physically centered in the center of this stove cover. Also, I have the frame, the work area, positioned to where it encompasses the center of the work area. So as far as this part of it goes, I do have a video, if you're interested, that shows you a little more in depth from the computer's perspective of how to go about lining this up. And it's basically just going to be lining up large objects, I think so. So I'll try to drop a link in the description. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and do the Home Sweet Home. I've got 3 more paneled out. So now that I've got everything ready, I need to make sure I'm focused. So I'm going to drop the kickstand, lower the laser head, get it focused. I'm going to go ahead and turn my air assist on about halfway. And this is the ComGrow air assist. I'll add a link also if you're interested in one of those. I'm opening the Home Sweet Home stove cover file. And the way to get this thing centered, guys, is you want to select the entire graphic and then click on the crosshair with the red dot in the middle, and that is going to move it to where the laser is. Center it on the laser's location. And so that's centered on the laser's location. I'm going to frame just to make sure I don't have any cables or anything binding before I start burning. That's the biggest thing that with this, when I do this, is I want to make sure my cables can move freely, because in the event that I've got a cable pinched somewhere or something like that, I would rather it snatch it during a frame than to do it during an engrave on a large object like this that would require a lot of time and a lot of sanding to redo. So once that frames, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to launch the burn. First, we're going to give Bull some glasses so that he doesn't burn his retinas. And here we go, guys. Since we're not using the enclosure, everybody's got to have glasses on. Launching. And the first part of this, as you'll recall, guys, is this is going to do an outline. It's drawing an outline around where the image is going to be, and then the next layer it's going to come in, it's going to start backfilling that with the burn. So I'll check back with you in a little while and we'll get through the next steps. But if you're interested in this part of the video, guys, and how I go about lining these up, like I said, there's a more in-depth video on my channel, and I'll try to put a link to it in the description so you can go back and watch that for a screen view of light burn during this part of the process. So, be back shortly. All right, guys, the 10 watt got through with the stove cover. I'm just gonna ease you over there and let you take a look at it before I break it out of the, well, we'll wait. Let me break it out and then I'll show it to you. So I ain't gotta move the camera around. So it's as simple as powering off the X-Tool. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the power cables. And I've got another one that I've got to put up here. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna set this guy to the side because we got 4 of these that I've got to do this afternoon. And so I'm just gonna move my machine off to the side here and take the clamps off of this one. So there you go, guys. It looks backwards on the camera. I'm hoping it doesn't look backwards to you. But there's the engrave. So I'm gonna move this on over to the sanding table there. Oh, look, got uncut, got uncut. He said he wasn't gonna be on camera. I use my 2 straight edges here to get me an inch or so in here, and 2 inches in there. That's just my measurements I use because those are usually laying around to where I can get to them. And I put my screws down through here. And because I'm trying to talk and work at the same time, I messed up, but these 2 screw holes should not be here until I get to the phase of putting the handles on. Because these holes are gonna be really close to where the handles are gonna go, and I have, in my more recent designs, I quit putting those in until the end because I kept messing that up. And I've marked this board here just to be safe. I always just leave these guys short until I get done. So it is 22.5, but I like to mark them just to be absolutely positive that I've got everything's worked out and I haven't cut them too short or too long. Because if I have messed up on another measurement somewhere along the way, now would be the time that I'd actually be able to kind of correct that. So fixing to snag the end off of this guy where I can put it together. And like I said, this is just my method, guys. I like to make sure I haven't messed up anywhere and went too long or anything. And I just like using my piece to measure them with, just to be sure. All right, one thing that you do have to do during this part of the process, guys, is select which side of the wood you want out. Whichever side of the wood you want out, I place it downward. I'm gonna raise the board up just enough to where this thing just sits on it, but not too much. Same thing here. This thing's got a little bit of a blemish on that side that I'm not fond of. So I'm gonna put that side facing the board. Just gonna kind of set that under the edge here and let it rest on it. So now, getting down to the last little steps. Driveway alarm's going off. May have another delivery. See, USPS has been here today. FedEx has been here today. And UPS has been here today. All right, I'm applying a generous, not too generous, but a generous amount of glue to this surface. And you want enough for it to stick, but not so much that it runs and gets on the face of the piece here. So once I get that on there, guys, I'm just gonna slide this guy underneath, using my thumbs to line up the corners, making sure I'm flush, square, trued up. I like to start in the middle. Confirm that I didn't move anything in that process. And then I go out to the edges. And that is so in case you've got one that's got a little bit of a bow, because sometimes if you get the wrong lumber, or you put these things together, you can occasionally have one that's got a little spring to it. So if you start in the middle and work your way out, I have found that it's easier to resolve that without it getting into a bind or cracking anything. These are 1 1¼ inch screws, and I'm working with 3/4 inch material, which gives me a 1/4 inch to play with, and I inset them about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm cutting it close, so you really don't want to rock them through, because if you rock them too hard and you penetrate into the wood, you will get a peak out to the other side, and that's not good. So glue this side. Like I said, about 2 lines of glue, and that's generally all you need, because once you put these screws in, it's going to press this thing together. It's going to hold it good, but the glue to me is just one more safeguard to make sure nothing moves and it stays where it's supposed to be. Smells like wintertime out here without a smoke eater on that other engrave. Smells like burning pine. All right, guys, that's got the top on it. Now, the next step is for the handles. And what I'll be doing on the handles is, this is 22.5 inches. So I'm going to come up 11 1/4. It will make me a little faint mark. I'm going to do the same on this side. Don't make it too aggressive, because if you do, you're going to get it off in a minute. And then I'm going to take my little template here, throw it on there, center it, put me a mark for where the handle will go. You can tell which ones I use all the time. And then the handles that I use, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and show you and fit check. I order these things in like a box of 50 or 100. These are just my standard little handles, and they're gonna go right here. And then the screws come in from the back side and attach to them. But I'm gonna come in from the back side with that same countersink that I use for the other screws. And see, now that I've got these holes popped, see, these were off on this side. They're never on that line. So just gonna go in and put my countersink in. And there we go. Ready for some light sanding and stain now, guys. So I'm gonna spare you the sanding and the staining. I'm just gonna hit this lightly, because I got a little bit of shadowing on this light colored wood, but I'm gonna hit it really light with the 120. I don't want an aggressive 120, so I'm gonna use this old piece that had gotten a little dull on me. Put it back on there because I don't want to go too aggressive, because some of these soft spots in this pine, it'll actually take my engrave out if I'm not careful. And there is the engrave. I'll pull it up a little closer for you to see it, guys. Now that we've got this awesome camera that I can actually zoom on things with. So, there it is, guys. Nice and, let's see how well we can zoom. Nice and dark. Consistent, it's centered, it's ready to go. So, at this point, we're gonna do some sanding to the remainder of it, kind of round the edges. They like these things to be rustic, and rustic stuff doesn't have sharp corners. So I'm gonna go around it with this old sandpaper so I don't tear up the new sheet, and I'm gonna kind of lay these corners down and kind of round them over and just make it look a little worn. So give me a few minutes and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. All right, guys, got her all put together, got the handles on it, some stain. This stain is Early American by Minwax, and you can see it in most of my videos. I got 2 gallons of it that just sits back there. But there we go. Handles are on. Stove covers are ready to go, guys. Complete with rubber feet, the little felt feet, and the Clack Shack stamp on the back. So that's that, guys. That's what I spend. Y'all hear me talking about making stove covers and staying busy with stove covers. That is the process from start to finish. That's the process. Now, before I was actually making them out of lumber that I milled myself, but because of the demand, because I'm trying to make 4 or 5 of these a week, I can't keep up, you know, working my full-time job and trying to mill the lumber, dry the lumber, make it into usable lumber, and then make them. It was just too much. So I had to kind of come up with a way of expediting the process. And what I'm doing is I'm just buying commercially available materials, and I've even had to call in for some backup. So my brother's going to be helping me with these things in the future, and so maybe he can turn them out and help me stay caught up a little more. Also, guys, UPS, FedEx, and the whole crew ran today, and I've got a ComGrow Z1 laser engraver sitting over there, as well as a Niji S2 Pro, I think it's called. But I'm gonna be getting those guys out and seeing what those things are all about. But I'm trying to get these orders out before I do, so bear with me, but be on the lookout for that video. But that's it for tonight, guys. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. And until next time, have a good day.